Hello everyone, my name is Sylver and we are here to talk about how we can automate Office 365 administration with Azure Automation and PowerShell. First of all, we thank the traditional owners of the land and we pay our respect to elders, past, present and future, and welcome to all the participants to this event. I would like to thank as well the organizers of these events. It has been a huge reorganization, so huge thanks to you for organizing this great event and for having me speak today. There is a competition for this week. For all the registered participants, you can scan the QR code to enter the prize draw. If you want to see the rules, you can go to the M365May website to see them. We have a code of conduct for this event, so please be constructive, respectful, helpful, and be kind to everyone. If you want to see the full version of the code of conduct, you can go to the M365May website as well. A little bit of me. My name is Sylver. I'm not from Australia or New Zealand. I'm from New Caledonia. New Caledonia is a little French island not so far from Australia and New Zealand. I am an MVP in cloud and data center management, and I am working with Office 365 and SharePoint as a consultant in a company called SF2I, but I'm mainly doing some automating stuff with Office 365 by the use of PowerShell. If you do want to contact me, there is my social information on the right of this slide, so do not hesitate to email me or contact me through social media. So our agenda for today, we are going to talk about automation. I will define what is automation and introduce some Microsoft products that are used in order to automate stuff on premises or on the cloud. And I will share with you guys my vision about automation. Right after, I will talk about Azure Automation. I will introduce it and give you an overview of this service. I will then explain the main concept of Azure Automation and then give you some real-life example of what you can do with Azure Automation. At the end of this session, I will do 3 quick demonstrations about some real-life examples that you can do very quickly in Azure Automation in order to automate your Office 365 administration. So let's start with automation. If we go on Wikipedia and we just read the definition, it's written that automation is a technology by which a process or procedure is performed without any human assistance. In my future examples and in the demonstration, I will use PowerShell scripts combined to Azure Automation to perform some technical actions without any Office 365 administrator clicking on a button. For instance, I will show you how we can activate Office 365 licenses without any manual actions in the Microsoft 365 Administrator Center. This is my vision of automation. I'm that kind of guy. When I start a project with my colleague, I always want to automate everything. I'm that guy that say to my colleague, you know, when we have to do something twice, we should have automated it the first time, all right? Because, you know, automation could be an intimidating task, but when you are really good at it, you will definitely be someone really valuable to your IT department and to your colleague, all right? Automation will help you save some time, you know, execute tasks where you don't have any added value doing it. And it will give you the time to do some tasks where you have added value. It will help you automate inconvenient tasks as well as preventing manual mistakes. So my advice is if you have to do something more than once, automate it the first time, all right? It will save you a lot of time and effort afterwards. So now let's talk about some Microsoft tools that you might already use in order to automate some tasks on your on-premises environment or in the cloud. This is a non-exhaustive list of tools, but the first one on the left is PowerShell. PowerShell, executed on an on-premises environment, is executed on a Windows server, and if you want to schedule some executions, you are probably using the schedule task feature of Windows Server in order to schedule your PowerShell scripts. The problem that we have in this is that you need to maintain this Windows Server on your on-premises environment. You have to patch it, you have to secure it, you have to upgrade it, all right? But if you have a lot of scripts that are automating your on-premises environment, this is one of the good solutions. For those who are using the System Center Orchestrator, the second icon in the center of this slide, you use this system, which is part of the System Center ecosystem, in order to run some runbooks that are helping you to automate some tasks and some processes, right? The third one on the right of this slide is Microsoft Power Automate, formerly Microsoft Flow. It helps us work smarter by automating workflows across apps and services in Office 365, but not only. There are a lot of connectors available in Microsoft Power Automate for multiple non-Microsoft services that will help you connect to those services to perform some actions. For instance, you can connect to Twitter or to Trello. You will use a visual designer in order to build your workflow, all right? There are a lot of other tools that could help you to automate, but those three are three well-known tools in the Microsoft environment, okay? So right now, I'm going to introduce you to a fourth tool called Azure Automation. And I will just stop a second to say to you, if you have any question, we will have a Q&A section at the end of this session. So you can write the question in the Q&A, and at the end, I will read all of your questions and answer them. So let's go back to the slide and let's introduce Azure Automation. For those who don't know Azure Automation, this is a cloud-based automation and configuration service in which there is three main features. The first one is the process automation. You can automate frequent tasks, you can automate time-consuming tasks and error-prone management tasks by the use of the process automation feature. What we will do later on this session, I will use the process automation in order to store my PowerShell scripts and to execute them in order to automate some Office 365 administration tasks. In Azure Automation, you can use the configuration management part as well. The configuration management part is a DSC server, DSC for desired state of configuration. So this is a DSC pool server located in Azure that you can use in order to manage the configuration of your Azure VM, of your on-premises VM, or on some VM that are located on other cloud, like for instance, Amazon AWS cloud, all right? If you want to manage your on-premises environment, you will have to install an agent on your on-premises environment in order for your on-premises environment to communicate with Azure Automation. The last part is the update management. This part is a solution located in Azure that will help you manage your operating system updates for Windows servers and Linux servers. All right. it's kind of, we can see it as a WSUS-like solution on Azure, but way more effective. I use it, for instance, for some clients that have their VM on Azure. Be careful with this solution because it only supports Windows Server and it does not support Windows clients like Windows 10, for instance. All right. So in Azure Automation, we will use what we call shared capabilities. Shared capabilities or shared resources that makes our life easier when we want to automate some stuff by the use of scripts, PowerShell scripts, for instance. All right, we will have the ability to store variables that will be available in our scripts. So our script will consume those variables. We will have the capability, to store credentials, and they will be stored securely by Azure. And we will have the ability to store modules that will be consumed by our scripts, and of course to create some schedules or the time when we want our scripts to be executed. All those shared capabilities are stored in one place, and they are consumed by your scripts at all time. All right. And one of the big things of Azure Automation is that this is serverless. You don't have to manage a Windows Server virtual machine that you need to secure, to update, or even to upgrade, all right? We don't have any server. The server part is managed by Microsoft here. So we have the ability to run PowerShell in a cloud-based engine, in an Azure-based engine, all right? So this enables us to execute some PowerShell scripts, some PowerShell DSC scripts, and some PowerShell workflows directly on Azure. All right. Just be careful with the run PowerShell in an Azure-based engine because Microsoft added the support, for instance, of Python 2. So if you want to execute some Python script, you can use Azure Automation in order to execute your Python scripts. All right. We will store the scripts in what we call runbooks. A runbook is a container for your scripts, and you can see a runbook like a set of instructions that will be performed automatically. This is the lines that are on your PowerShell code. Your runbook will be executed securely because all the runbooks, when a runbook is executed, we call that a job. We will see that on the next slide. And the job is executed in a sandbox environment. So it is totally isolated and secure. Let's have a look on the main concept of Azure Automation. The first one is what we call the automation account. This is what we have on the top of our automation environment. It contains everything you want to do and everything you need to make it happen. So the runbooks, the assets, and the jobs that we are going to define are stored or localized in your automation accounts. Your runbooks will contain your PowerShell code, okay? This is your other checklist that you will execute in order to have the process done, right? The assets are what we call shared capabilities earlier. So the assets are reusable components that are shared through all your runbooks, all right? So if we think about what an asset is for instance, a credentials, we will only have to store the credential in a credential object, and all our scripts will consume this asset. The really cool thing about that is that we don't have to manage the security of this credential in all our scripts, and we don't need to modify the account, the credential in all the scripts when the account change. We just have to change it in one place. This is the asset place. All right. This is the same thing for the variables. If you need to define, for instance, a SharePoint site URL, you will create a variable that will store this URL. And if the URL changes tomorrow, you will only have to change it in one place, and all your scripts will continue to consume the new value. The last important concept is the job. When a runbook is executed, a job is created, and this is the job that run and execute your PowerShell code. The job represents an instance of your runbook, and you can see a job as a snapshot of your runbook with all the needed assets and the schedule configuration. So if your PowerShell scripts need one variables, one credentials, the job will add them, to your sandbox environment and will use this variable and this credential in order to execute your PowerShell scripts. All right. Your job will have multiple states. It could be queued, it could be starting, it could be running, or it could be, for instance, completed or failed. All right. Let's see really quickly some real-world example of what you can do with Azure Automation in order to automate some Office 365 administration tasks. For instance, for small companies that don't have Active Directories, you can create Azure AD users or manage them. For instance, change the last name when someone married another person. You can manage and automate license assignment, and you can do, for instance, some custom reporting. You can have report on your SharePoint site storage consumption, or for instance, you can have some custom reports on your Exchange Online environment. All right. You will see in a few minutes in my demonstration that I will use the license assignment automation, and I will use the Exchange Online distribution group membership automation through some SharePoint Online lists. Before we go to the demos, what you need to have in order to start using Azure Automation. First of all, you need to have some PowerShell knowledge. In order to use Azure Automation with PowerShell scripts, you definitely need to know a little bit about PowerShell. If you want to do the configuration management part, you need to know as well what is PowerShell DSC and how to use it. You will see on my script that I use some modules, Azure AD modules, for instance. So in order to automate Office 365 administration, you need to know how to use PowerShell modules on your scripts. If you never have an Azure subscription, you can go on the link I've put on these slides to have a $200 free credit for 30 days in order to try Azure and Azure Automation. You will have as well 12 months of popular services for free. In those popular services, you will have, for instance, 5 GB of blob storage or access to an Azure Cosmos database. You will also have 25 plus always free services, and in those always free services, you have 500 minutes of jobs runtime of Azure Automation. So you can really start to try Azure Automation for free. So right now I'm going to go to demos, but before doing some demos, I will show you very quickly the interface of Azure Automation. So if I go on my Azure environment, you can see that I already have created an Azure Automation account that I have called Automation M365 Mail. If I click on this automation account, you will see on the screen that I have multiple parts, and the part that are going to be used on today's demos or the shared resources part. This is where we are going to store our credentials, our variables, and our modules. And the process automation part is where we have the runbooks, and the runbooks are where we are going to store our PowerShell scripts. So very quickly, if we click on credentials, you will see that I have registered an Office 365 administrator, and the name of my credential is O365 admin. I don't have access to the password because this is a credential that has been encrypted by Microsoft. All right. If I go to the variables part, you can see that I already have created multiple variables that I am going to use in my scripts. I have created a SharePoint list variable that stores the title of a SharePoint list. I have the SharePoint site variables, which is an URL of a demonstration site I am going to use, another SharePoint list title, and the last one is the SKU ID of my license, which is, as you can see, encrypted. And another thing that is important is the modules. I didn't install all of those modules. There are a lot of modules that are installed by default when you create an Azure Automation environment, but I did install the Azure AD module and the SharePoint PnP PowerShell Online module because I need them for my PowerShell scripts. The other environment I want to show you are the runbooks. When you click on runbooks, you can see that I have created multiple runbooks. The three I'm going to use today are the M365 Assign License, Create Distribution Group, and Create User. And if we go in one of them, the Assign License, for example, you can see that I already have executed my runbooks multiple times, and I have pasted the PowerShell code in my runbook. So right now, I'm going back to the slides in order to explain to you the first demonstration. So we are going to automate the license attribution. So what usually happens? So the process when you have an Active Directory and you synchronize your account on Azure AD, you have what we call Azure AD Connect installed on your environment. So you create the user on your Active Directory, and a few minutes later, your account has been synchronized with Azure AD and Office 365. So as an administrator, you need to connect to Microsoft 365 Administration Center. You need to select your user and you need to give the user a license, all right? And after, you might send an email to the manager or to the people that are going to work with this person, all right? When you do that manually, this is probably 5 minutes of your time, but this is 5 minutes lost, all right? You can use those 5 minutes on some more value-added tasks, right? So what we are going to do, we are going to automate the process. So what I have done, all my users in my Active Directory that needs to have a license or in a security group that is called Office 365 E3. All right, let me show you these groups. So here in my Microsoft 365 environment, I have a group called Office 365 E3, and in this security group, I have multiple members. All right, Sylver, Florent, John, Paul, and Henry. All right. But if I go to the user tab here, I can see that Henry doesn't have a license. So automatically, I have a PowerShell script stored in a runbook that is going to run, and all the users that are in this E3 security group but doesn't have a license will have a license automatically assigned. So let me show you very quickly my scripts. So what I'm going to do on my script, I am going to import the module. I am going to use the credential called O365 admin in order to connect to my Office 365 environment. I am going to get the SKU ID because I need the SKU ID to create a license object that I will assign to my user. All right, so here I use the SKU ID here in order to create a license object. I am creating a usage location and I configure it to be Australia. And then I am connecting to my Azure AD environment with my credentials. And I am getting every user that are member of my Office 365 E3 group. Then I will loop, and for each user, I will see if the user is already licensed. So he is in the E3 group and he already has a license, so I don't need to give him a license. Or if he doesn't have a license, so my user is not licensed, I will configure the usage location to Australia, and then I will assign the license to this user. For the purpose of this demonstration, I will not wait the schedule to run the script, and I will click on the start button in order to start the execution right now. So what this is doing, it has created a job, as you can see right here, and my job is currently queued. So it might take a few seconds or a few minutes, but then my job, will be running. Yeah, we can see there, it is already completed. So if I go to the logs, we have few logs, and you can see that my user called Henry Smith does not have license. So what my script did, he assigned an Office 365 E3 license to Henry Smith and set the location to Australia. So if I go back to my Office 365 environment and I refresh here, we can see that Henry Smith have an Office 365 E3 license. So here you can use the script in order to automate all your Office 365 assignment license for your company. All the script that I show you very quickly in this demonstration will be available on my GitHub, and I will give you the link after. The second demonstration I want to show you is how you can automate the distribution list membership. So in your company, you probably have some users that call you or create a ticket in your ticketing system in order to change membership in your distribution groups. So as an administrator, you probably go to Microsoft 365 Administration Center, then you go to Exchange ECP control panel, you go to the group section and you manage the distribution groups membership. Or if you have a synchronization with your Active Directory, you go to the Active Directory interface and you manage it from here. What we can easily do is we can give back the power of the membership management to the user. So what I am going to show you, I have created a really simple SharePoint list in which every user can really simply add new member to distribution group. So let me show you this SharePoint list. Here I have my two distribution groups of my demonstration Office 365 tenant. I have a group called Contact Distribution List, and I have another group called Marketing Distribution List. And in my Contact Distribution List, I have 2 members, and in my Marketing Distribution group, I have 3 members. If one of the people in your company that you give the right to access the SharePoint list want to modify the membership of the Contact Distribution List, he just has to click on the Contact Distribution List here, and then click Edit and add a new user. For instance, I will add another one. I will add Henry Smith. Sorry. And I just, as a user, have to save it. What my script is going to do, my runbook is going to read all the distribution groups that are in this SharePoint list, check the membership associated to this distribution group, and then add new users to the real distribution group on Office 365. So if we have a look to this runbook, right here, sorry. If we go to the distribution group runbook and we have a look to the code, I am going to import my modules, and I need the SharePoint PNP PowerShell module because I'm going to connect to SharePoint and to read my SharePoint list. I'm still going to use the credentials. I'm going to use my variables, so my SharePoint URL and my SharePoint list title. And you see here, I'm just consuming the variable called SharePoint site. So if tomorrow you change the URL, you will just have to change it in the asset part and not in every script that you created. After that, I'm going to connect to SharePoint and to Exchange in order to manage my distribution group, all right? And what I'm going to do, I am going to get all the items that are stored in my SharePoint list. The items being all those distribution group and the membership associated, all right? And when I have all those distribution group, I'm gonna loop through them, and I'm gonna see if the user is already member or not. And if the user is not already member of the real distribution group in Office 365, I'm gonna add this user into this group. And if the user is already member of the group, I simply gonna write on the output that this user is already a member of the group. So I'm gonna execute the script as well by clicking on the start button. And it's gonna take some time to queue the job, to run the job, and to finish the job. So just to show you before, if I go to my contact group here, you can see right here that there is only 2 members right now, which are me and Paul. And when the script will have finished its execution, you will see that Henry Smith will be member of this group. So let's refresh the execution here. My script is still running. Whoop, it's now completed. So I am going to go back on my Office 365 group interface. I'm going to refresh. Click on the contact distribution group, go to the members part, and then you can see that I have Henry Smith as a member of this distribution group. So with this really simple SharePoint list and these really simple scripts, I can give back the power to the user to manage the membership of some distribution group of your Office 365 environment. The last demo that I want to show you today is the onboarding process for really small company. You know, on really small companies, you don't always have some Active Directory, and you don't always have some IT department in order to do your IT stuff. So what happened a lot of time is that an employee is hired. It's probably managed by the CEO or maybe HR if there is HR in the company. And then the CEO or the HR is going to ask an IT service company to create the user. Create the email and all the necessary stuff for the future employee to work with the IT tools, you know. And when the task is done, the task is done before the employee arrival, and this is not always the case. So what I want to do here is give back the power to create the user to the CEO. So here again, we are going to use a SharePoint online list in which we will enter the name of the new user, first name, etc. And a script will automatically read that and create the user in Office 365 and assign the user a license. So let's go back to SharePoint, and here you can see a really simple SharePoint list that I've created in order to create new user in Office 365. So what the CEO will have to do is simply click on the new button here, give an employee ID, for instance, give the first name, give the last name of the user, a job title, a phone number, the department in which this user is going to work, and a manager. The manager will be me. I've let this item on the screen to show you how I manage the creation of a user. This can be hide to your user in order for them not to click here on no, all right? But how I will manage on my script if I need or not to create the user, if this switch is set to yes, my script know that it needs to create the user. At the end of the execution of my script, I will set this switch to no in order for my script not to create again this user, all right? So if I click on the save button here, you can see that there is a new user here called Mike Henry, and the switch button create is set to yes. So if we quickly go to my runbook called create user, and if we have a quick look to the code, I still need to import the module. I will use the same credentials. I will here again get the variable for the SharePoint site, for the SharePoint list I'm using, and for the SKU ID, because I'm going to assign a license to my user. I am going to create a password that my user will need to change when he will first log in. I will create a license object that I will use to assign the license to my user, and I'm going to connect to PNP Online, to SharePoint, and I'm going to connect to Azure AD. And what I'm going to do, I am getting all the element from my list, all the items, sorry, from my list, and I'm going to loop on each user that are stored on my list. I'm going to get all the information of my user, the first name, last name, the country, the city, etc. And I am going to create, if the switch is set to true, I am going to create the user. I am going to assign the manager to the user, and I am going to set the license, to assign the license to my user. And finally, I am going to put the switch create to false in order for my scripts to not execute again and to not try to create again the same user. So if I click on the start button again, we can as well quickly go to the user part of my Office 365 environment, and you can see here that I don't have any user called Mike Henry, all right? So if I go back to the execution of my script is still queued here, so it can take few seconds to few minutes to be executed. So we just are going to wait a little bit. All right, so my script is running here, and I didn't show you this, but we have access to some logs here. Okay, no log found at the moment. We have access to errors if we have errors, and we have access to warning and exceptions if some warning and exceptions are being shown during the execution of the scripts. All right. So as for me, my script is still running. If I go to the logs, all right, so you can see some logs just pop in right here, and the last log here is that my user called Mike Henry have been created. So if I go back to the Office 365 environment and I refresh the active user part, I should have my user called Mike Henry here. And this is it. You can see here I have a user called Mike Henry. He has the good username, he has the license, and the usage location and the country is the good one. And I just, as a CEO, as a user, I just needed to fill a simple list, a simple form in SharePoint, and the script will automatically execute, read the information, and create the user and assign the license. We can go a little bit more further by, for instance, give the good right on the SharePoint teams, on the Microsoft Teams, Teams, on the SharePoint sites, put the user in the good distribution group because we have the department of the user, etc. So this is just a really simple creation script, but you can go further and add more features to the scripts. So my final thoughts about automation and Azure Automation is that one. All right. So if I can give you again, my advice is when you have something to do more than once, automate it the first time. It will give you some time after that to work on some really added value tasks. All right. Automation again will help you save some time and execute really important tasks, really important stuff where you add some value to those tasks. It will help you automate inconvenient tasks as well, and it will prevent manual mistakes, all right? Because when you have a script that is executing a process, you can't have manual mistakes, all right? What you need if you want to start today. First of all, you need to subscribe to Azure. In one of the previous slides, I gave you the free trial Azure account link, and I will give it to you again in the other slides. But this is the prerequisite. You need an Azure subscription. And then if you never use PowerShell or Azure Automation, start small. Start automating small stuff like I just did for the license. Okay, licensing automation is really simple. It's few lines of code. Start with simple thing like this, and then go bigger. All right, go with boring stuff. Go with a bigger process when you want to eliminate human errors. And as well, you can use PowerShell to do some Office 365 reporting. For instance, the number of Microsoft Teams in your organization, or the number of mailbox redirection that you have, or SharePoint site, etc. All right, and you can do and execute all this reporting in Azure Automation. Here you can have some useful links. The first one being again the free trial, $200 free for 30 days. And then you have multiple links on, for instance, an introduction to Azure Automation, or an explanation and documentation of the Azure AD. This is it for my presentation. I would really like to thank the sponsors as well as the organizer, but you know, those kind of events wouldn't be possible without sponsors. So a really huge thanks to the sponsors. And again, big thanks to the organizer for this great M365 May event. So I will now switch to the Q&A. So if there is any question, I will read them and answer them. So the first question is, I use PowerShell, but what is DSC? DSC means desired state of configuration. When you want, for instance, to have a Windows server that will always only be a DNS server, and you don't want it to be a DHCP server or an Active Directory server, you can use the PowerShell DSC technology to set the configuration of the server to be only DNS server. And what it's going to do, it's going to check every minute, 15 minutes or 30 minutes if the server is compliant. So if it is only a DNS server, And if someone manually added, for instance, DHCP server, you can configure DSC to remove the HTTP server and only let the DNS server. You can configure it to remove or to other queue, for instance. All right. So I hope I answered your question. Another question is, how is it different having PowerShell script locally and using Office 365 module to communicate with the server, like Teams PowerShell module, Azure AD module? Then we can run script locally to automate it. When do we use Azure Automation over this? Thanks. So if I do understand well your question, you want to know when you put your script on premises and when you put your script on the cloud. From my perspective, when I want to automate stuff on Office 365, I put the scripts on the cloud, on Azure Automation, because I don't want to maintain a Windows server in which I need to maintain the security, maintain the updates, and in the future upgrade to new version of Windows Server. So when I need to automate stuff that are mainly located in the cloud, I do go with Azure Automation. I hope I answered your question as well. Another question is, I have MPN ID, what the yearly price to access Azure and Azure Automation? To access Azure is a big environment where you can do some infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, etc. So there is no, basic yearly price, because it will depend on what you are consuming on Azure. And for Azure Automation, the consumption, the price, is made on how many minutes you consumed on this service. All right. So if you consume, I don't know, maybe 5,000 minutes, it will be a different price that if you consume 10,000 minutes. Can Azure Automation be included in robotic process automation? I never had to do that, so I don't really have the answer, but I guess if you can interconnect or execute some code in Azure Automation that can be executed on your system, it would probably be possible, but I never did it, so I'm not sure if in your particular case this will be possible. So there was 4 questions. I answered those 4 questions. Is there any other questions? You can ask them directly in the Q&A section. All right, so if there is no other questions or no new question, I guess this is the end of this session. Thank you everyone for being to this session. Again, thanks the organizer, and thank you for having me talk to this amazing M365 May event. Have a nice day.